So good evening, everyone. And it's my pleasure to welcome everyone to the second day of the Quality Week 2021, organized by the Colombo Quality Camp. So we are so excited to have all of you here today to the session. And at first, I would like to extend a special welcome to our keynote speaker, Shamir Dawood, who is working as a senior UX lead in 99X. Shamir has over 9 years of experience in the industry and has worked in the products related to industries such as HRM, RSCM, HIS, and many other SME products. So this evening, he will be walking us through the topic, adopting a design thinking process for a quality output of your digital product. And also for the participants, if you come up with any questions during the session, you can post all those in the chat and Shamir will provide you the answers at the end of the session. Also, a small reminder to all the participants here, we will be having a quiz at the end of the session and we have an exciting gift lined up for the winner of the day. So stay tuned for that as well. So without taking much time, I will hand over the session to the speaker. So Shamir, you can take over the session.
Okay, thank you very much, Vishma and the Quality Assurance Colombo Quality Camp team. So with no further ado, let's begin. Let me start by sharing screen. Okay, Vishma, hope you all can see my screen.
Yes, Shamir.
Okay, right. So once again, team for giving me this opportunity. And I would like to start off by saying hello and welcome everyone to the day 2 of this Quality Week 2021. And I'm Shamir Dawood, just like Vishma gave the introduction. And hope everyone's keeping well and doing well. So I was given the opportunity to talk about how quality can be integrated with the UX for how can quality be measured through user experience. So then what I thought was to kind of talk about the output, the quality that we can give if we kind of follow a design thinking approach, right? So today I'll be discussing how adopting a design thinking process for a quality output for your digital product. So before we begin, so this is a brief about me. So like Bishma said, I'm working as a senior user experience lead at 99X. And currently at 99X, I'll be working with 2 main projects. One is Easy2, it's a logistics handling product, and Superb is it's kind of a community product. So let me just first touch base upon the agenda for today. So basically the agenda is what is design thinking, the design thinking as a process, then the stages of design thinking process, and then why is design thinking iterative process. So I'll be explaining briefly upon what these terminologies means if you all might not know. And then again, why is design thinking important and how can it help improve the quality of a digital product? So within this session, when you all hear the facts and figures, I think you all can grasp that as well. But at the end of the session, I would like to touch base and kind of summarize the stuff. And then like Bishma and the team said, it will be followed up with a Q&A session and then a small quiz. Okay, so with no further ado, let's begin. So starting off with, what is design thinking? So I know some of you would have heard this terminology many a times, and some of you might know this. So just a bit of a theoretical explanation I would like to touch base upon. So design thinking originally came about as a way of, I think, teaching engineers how to approach problems in a more creative manner back in the early days, right? So this is like, I think, the 80s, 90s kind of decades. So one of the first people who wrote about design thinking was someone called John E. Arnold. You all can check this author out. He's a professor of mechanical engineering at the Stanford University. So if you can get hold of this book or this author's writings, you all can get a more deeper understanding about what is design thinking. So like I said, back in the early 1950s, he wrote a book called Creative Engineering book that actually explained what design thinking is. And then in the 80s, so I'll be getting towards the design thinking explanation or the what is design thinking. But before that, I just want to kind of touch base upon the background of how the design thinking kind of came into the arena, right? So, like I said, back in the 80s, then with uh, uh, human-centric design. So, the designs were based upon the end users, right? So then the formation of design conceptuality from a company called IDEO, you all would have heard. So it's a kind of a company and a community. So way back in the 90s, they kind of became increasingly popular by describing and kind of explaining what design thinking is and what the design thinking process is. So in the 21st century, as you all know, the day and age that we are living, design thinking is like with everyone. So it's not about only about for designing products. It's for actually designing services and other applications and products, not only software and mobile, so other products as well. So the design thinking process can be adopted by any team, any individual, or any organization, right? So before I kind of give my own explanation, I think we can kind of have a look at what the majority of the community. So like I would like to say the big boys or the established organizations, communities out there, how do they describe design thinking, right? So first of all, like I said, the IDEO is an organization. From them, actually the IDEO U is their design, what do you call, I would say the designing agency or the area where the designs and the communities handle. So they are called IDU. What they say is basically design thinking is a human-centered approach to innovation, right? These people are one of the well-renowned design firms that takes human-centered approach to innovate and grow. Then second up, we have IDF. I think most of you all would have in the industry of UI UX would have come across and would have done their courses and certifications and would have gained a lot of knowledge. So what IDF basically says is that design thinking is a non-linear iterative process that teams use to understand users, challenge their assumptions, redefine problems, and create innovative solutions and prototype and test. So that's what they say. And then next up, we have InVision. I think most of you all would use Figma, Sketch, and XD, but InVision is also up there. So InVision is a leading digital product designing platform. So what they say about design thinking is basically, design thinking is both an ideology and a process to seek to solve complex problems in a user-centric way. That means based upon the end users. So I think basically now you all get an idea what design thinking is. It's basically you frame your problems, you identify your end users, and you kind of frame the problems and you try to solve those problems in an innovative way to kind of add value to the end users by developing a quality product or a service. So that's basically it. So next up, I would like to touch base upon the stages of design thinking process. So like I explained previously, design thinking is how the approach is being taken. But as you all know, as you all would have heard, design thinking is a process, and this process actually, so there are 5 main stages of the process, right? These stages differ from practice to practice, and some people they use just 3 stages of this process. Some they extend up to 7 stages. Like you get a stage kind of like learning and stuff like that. So it depends on how you're comfortable and what works for you. But like well-renowned organizations such as IDF and most of the people are following, I think these 5 stages are the most crucial or critical to kind of follow up on the design thinking process. So these are a set of ideal steps for the process. So there is no say that the design thinking process can be followed by only one, design professional, or that you need to have, something like user experience qualifications, or you need to have degrees and diplomas, or you need to be in the design field. But this is a process that it's not limited to a UI UX per se, but anyone who is kind of looking forward to solve problems for the end users more innovatively, and trying to come up with concepts, trying to finalize them, trying to see what works the best. So for that kind of a process, the design thinking really helps. So this is basically this process anyone can use to solve problems and come up with solutions and to validate them against their end users, right? So the 5 stages are, like you all can see, it's called, first one is called empathize. Then you have the define stage. Then you have the ideation stage. Then based upon the ideation, you have the prototyping. And then once you do the prototyping, you basically test them with the end users or with your community. So let me just kind of touch base upon these individual stages and give a more in-depth understanding of what these means, right? So first up, we have the stage empathize, or we call it as empathy. At this point, we should basically understand the target audience, right? So target audience means the end users, or our end users, or for any application or product, basically who is going to use this. And to do that, we need to research our users' needs, and then kind of have a empathy towards understanding the problem what we are trying to solve for these users. So when you say empathy, most of the UX designers out there would know. We know how we can kind of define an empathy map and kind of understand what they say, what they think, what they do, and what they feel. When you kind of have this map drawn, you kind of you can get a clear understanding about the audience, right? So empathy is crucial to a human-centered design process. You need to kind of do this at least in a very basic level. You need to understand who the users are for us as end users. What are their main problems? What are their concerns? How do they behave? How do they do their work? How is their daily lifestyle? Then any challenges? What are their what do you call geographical limitations? Then language perspective. So all these, when you try to understand, you can kind of map them into a empathy map, and also create a person out of that, right? Because here we are not designing or building a product for our own use, but for the use of our end users. That's what we need to always think about. That's why products or services designers, we should not go with what we feel like. We should not have assumptions. Assumptions means we should not think, okay, this might work. Okay, I think this would work. or okay, let's give it a try, I think this would work. So those are some of the assumptions that we make at the very early stages, even before we kind of understand who our end users are. But it's it really matters that you understand who your real users are, and then based upon that we make our assumptions towards it. So that's the reason, as UX designers or product design, it's crucial to gain insights about the users, because if we get this wrong at the very beginning, then the product, the quality of the product or the purpose of the product will be lost from there onwards. So it's very crucial that we understand and empathize on the end users and try and map these out and try to figure out what their culture and all these attributes. Okay, so after we do this empathy, so you don't have to kind of create a map, but at least you need to kind of understand your user group, and then based upon that you kind of have a small persona. So persona means the audience or the users that who's going to kind of use your product or service. Okay, so there are so many attributes that you need to kind of figure out or find out of these, from the basic information about these users to what they are liking, needs, and then the goal. So goal means what kind of output or what kind of expectation do they have from this, will they get from this product that we are building or service that we are building. So this is something really important at the beginning stage, empathy. So next up we have define. So once you all know your users needs and problems, so when you do the empathy mapping, you will understand, okay, what are we really going to solve as a problem and what do they really need. Because when we know that, only we actually get an idea, okay, so this is what we are going to solve, this is what we're going to give them as a product or as a solution. So this is basically the information that we gather from the empathizing stage, right? And to build a quality product or service, we need to know what are we trying to solve, like I said, because if not, we are going to be lost. That's the bitter truth. And then there may be one problem, or there may be few problems that we identify. But it's crucial, think about these stages, that we know what problems we are trying to solve, and we kind of prioritize them, right? So how this helps from the quality, if we don't understand or realize the problems that we're trying to solve, we will end up building a product or a service that will be no use for anyone. It will be really, high-end tech. It will have a really great interface, a superb user experience, with animations and all that stuff. But basically, if it doesn't serve the purpose for whoever is going to use at the end, the product will be left alone and it will be left to die. So no one will kind of use it and the product will be obsolete. So that's what I'm trying to say. So defining, understanding what kind of problem and need, and kind of understanding the problems is key. Okay, and then comes up the third stage is ideate. So this is something really interesting, something that I also like to do, because when it comes to ideation, there is no limits, right? It's all about what you have in your head and you kind of putting it out. So when we say ideate, you might have and thought about this for those who are new for this process, what ideation means. So ideation means basically, coming up with new ideas, concepts to try and solve the problems that you figured out. When thinking of ideas to solve, when we define, we will have to come across various assumptions, and we'll have many ideas, to solve one problem. But the most important thing is that you'll have to kind of think out of the box, and with the ideas that you generate, you actually pick and choose which idea will work what, or which idea should we go forward with? Will this idea work or this idea work? So this is where at this ideation stage, most teams, they get together and kind of brainstorm. They have quick discussions. They have ideation hackathons, a quick hackathon, kind of like you gather all the ideas from the team and try and map it out and see, okay, which idea works with this problem, which idea works in solving these problems. And then basically they have these voting systems. I think you already have come across these voting systems. So likewise, with a team or as an individual, you can kind of streamline and kind of shortlist these ideas and figure out which idea works the best. So in terms of ideation, how would ideation or ideate help the quality? So the ideate actually the quality of the product or service, if that when the best possible idea to solve a problem has been identified, and then the problem has less chances to fail at the point of the end users experiencing. So what I'm trying to say is that when we kind of have a bunch of people, great designers or the product team coming together and trying to ideate on one particular problem, and you all kind of brainstorm, argue, disagree. There are so many things that happen, and then finally we tend to kind of agree upon idea. And once you know that this is the idea that will solve this problem, there is a less chance that you would fail at the end of the product development phase when the product goes out to the end users. So this way you can actually keep the quality of the product, because there's no point building a product with many ideas. Like you have an idea to kind of like fetch data from here, there, and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, if it's not solving the actual need of that user, if you have even 1,000 ideas that you have put into an application, it will not work. So basically, that's what I'm trying to say in a high level or nutshell. Ideation is very crucial and something that's really interesting. Then next up, we have prototyping. So when you say prototyping, when you are running a design thinking process, it's actually based on the ideation stage, right? So when ideas are being voted and selected, like I said, from a team, or even handpicked, the best idea we have to go with, we kind of do it as a prototype. And then basically the designers will sketch them up with maybe a pen and paper, or through some wireframing tool like Balsamic or Draw.io or something like that. You can use any tool per se, or even Sketch, XD, Figma if you're good at it. You kind of sketch these ideas out. So most of the time at the process, we use something called rapid prototyping. So rapid prototyping is when you're doing this process, you don't take much time. You actually put your idea from your head into a pen and paper or to one of these applications. So this is kind of more than enough to show and explain what your idea is, because sometimes it's highly unlikely when you try to explain an idea without having something on a pen or paper or on a screen, the team or the end users will not understand what you're trying to say. So it's best that you kind of put it into a pen and paper. I think that's the very basic, and it's sad that most of us don't do that anymore, but it's a really good way of putting your ideas down on a paper so that before you even forget it. So with this practice, you can speed up the prototyping phase and go to the next phase as well, because when you kind of put your ideas then and there on papers, you kind of have them as proof or as archive, and you can kind of compare at any given time and see, okay, my first idea did not work. Okay, let me check up on my next idea. So likewise, you can kind of validate them and then come back, check the next idea, validate them. Likewise, the process goes on and on. This also can be compared and iterated many times in order to find the perfect balance, good design and usability. So when you're doing a prototyping phase, you get comments from your team, then the product owners, then also actually the end users might give comments and feedback. They'll say, okay, I think this button is too small, or I didn't kind of realize that there was a button here, or is this the button? Okay, then how do I kind of edit this form or fields? How do I get back? So all these can be kind of taken into consideration when you kind of do this rapid prototyping. So even if you don't have access to your end users, it's basically your team or your teammates, design teammates can give comments. And prototyping is a very crucial stage in this process. And once you do the prototyping, next up, the last stage is the testing phase. So when it comes to the testing phase, it's actually so once the prototype is being built and it can be tested with a real user. So we'll be using like a set of bunch of papers or low fidelity mockups that you create to kind of test this up, right? So you can test it with these users. You can actually test the concept. Okay, the idea or the concept that I have, will it work or not, right? Then when you can actually do kind of a A/B testing when you have kind of different ideas and you have jotted them down. So if my first idea would work rather than the second idea, keep them side by side and kind of compare them. And then in terms of usability, so when you do rapid prototyping, you can kind of like, if you are doing a mobile screen, where should the menu bar should be placed, top or down, sideways. So all these can be tested out and see what works the best. So in terms of usability, and then with this you can get an more in-depth idea and information, and also you get the confidence. Okay, I think we are in the right track. We understood the problem. We came into, we ideated that. We did a prototyping. We have a few options, and I think, and we think that okay, this is what works. Or else maybe a collection of from few prototypes may come to one place, and you can have that as a solution that you want to test it. So at this point, it's actually very rare that you get to kind of test it out with end users. But if you're a individual, you can actually kind of, you have so many platforms that you can figure out to test your solutions. Even when in the prototyping stage, the low fidelity prototyping stage, or if you have a team, you have a design team, you can kind of get together and test them out. Or if not, even if you have like the product owners, the QAs, the BAs, so you can get together with these guys and kind of validate your prototype and test them out and see whether they understand from an end user's perspective. Because when you try to kind of test them out, you don't actually tell them, okay, so this is my solution, this is how it works. You don't do that. So what you should actually do is you kind of hand them over and tell them, okay, this is the problem that we're trying to solve, and have a look at it and just test it out. And if you think, you can kind of explain them on a high level, and if they get it, and if they think, yeah, this might work, you can kind of test it with few people and see, and then you realize, yeah, I think this is the right solution, or we are on the right track. So this way, from empathizing to defining to ideating and to prototyping, and then finally you can test it out. But most of the people think that the design thinking process, we need to kind of go step by step, right? That's not the case. It's actually, it's more or less, you call it the iterative process. So I'll come to that next. So why is design thinking a iterative process? So what you mean by iterative means uh, it's not that you have to follow step by step specific in a specific order, and they can often occur like you can do it in parallel or in a repeated manner. So that's why we kind of call it iterative process, because it's not followed step by step, and you need to do it in a step by step manner, because you can like you can see in my screen the slide. You can kind of jump from empathizing state to prototyping, or if not from empathizing, you go to defining and then you go to ideation stage. So when you're doing the prototyping, you feel, okay, no, I think I got another idea. Then you go back to the ideation stage and you kind of put that idea up in that prototype and kind of do a version 2 of that prototype. So because of this uncertainty, and because you can kind of skip these steps and do it in parallel or do it back and forth, we call it, it's not a uh, uh, step that should be followed as a process. So that's why it's a iterative process. Also, we use methodologies like human centered design. So what we say is that the end users, we focus on the end users, right? When solving problems, we need to keep that in mind, and we need to know that we need to keep in mind that it's not us that who is going to use the product, it's the end users. So it's really important that we kind of get the core of this process and try to keep that in mind at all the stages, no matter which stage you are, and try to think from their perspective, and back it up with the ideas, the information that you have. So this is the reason why we need to kind of understand the end users at the very beginning, because if not, you get lost. You get tend to lost in the middle of this process, because you might not know what we are trying to do and whom are we trying to help this problem with. So when you follow a design thinking process, at the end, like I said, there is no hard and fast rule that we need to follow the stage one after the other. But once the testing is over, there is a satisfying, like there to satisfy the end users, a solution will be built, right? So when you build this solution, it's actually you're building this solution to solve a problem, solve a need of the end user, or the goal. What's the goal of this product? So when you figure out that, it's a mix of desirability, that means the human aspect, and then you have the feasibility from a technical perspective. How can we achieve this from application perspective? How can we do this? Then the viability, can we do this, or how does this impact the business? So likewise, so when you actually get a proper output, it's actually a balance of these three stages, or these three areas, right? And so last but not least, based upon what I explained about the design thinking and the design thinking process, so why is design thinking important, and how can it help improve the quality of a product, right? I think first up is that solve human centered problems or needs. At the empathy stage, when we empathize on users, we can get a clear understanding about the pain points and the problems that we're trying to solve. With this process, we can kind of improve the solution for those figured out problems and needs, rather than keeping it wide open and getting lost in a uh, uh, huge, like a jungle kind of a thing. So when we are focused on what's the problem and the need that we're trying to solve, that will really help in improving the quality of the product, and it will actually serve the purpose. Next up is solve problems difficult to define. What this means is sometimes the user will not know how to express or explain the problem they have. So when you're doing the ideation, and when you come to the defining part, you will kind of understand the user is trying to, maybe it could be the user, it could be the product owner, someone who is kind of trying to explain what the problem is. But when you actually in that phase, you can clearly understand, okay, this is the problem that the user has. It's not what I thought. So at that point, one thing is that it will kind of drill down and kind of stop the assumptions, and also it will help you to kind of focus and clearly understand what's the end user end problem is, right? Next up, we have thinking out of the box, help cook solutions. So this means that through the process, the user might emphasize on one problem, but the process we will be able to identify many more hidden problems or areas that need solutions. So the end user actually told us one problem, but while ideating, we came across a few more problems. Oh, okay. Okay, I thought there should be a search here. Why it should not be a search field here? So likewise, when you kind of ideate, you tend to kind of see some of the hidden problems that you didn't see in the initial phase. So this will actually help to improve the quality of the product, because later on, once the product is being built and shipped out, at some point when a user, sometimes these small problems might not be identified even at a QA stage when the product goes out. And then the end users kind of figure out, oh, okay, I cannot, connect to another app, or I cannot share these details. So likewise, so many things can be mitigated when you kind of do the ideation part. So it's about, thinking out of the box and trying to come up with a solution and seeing what works the best, right? Next up, we have efficiency and faster. So normally these design thinking processes, you can do it in 5 days, or you can do a rapid design thinking process, like you can kind of get together and kind of do it in a day. It's up to you. It's totally based upon the weight or the gravity of the product that you're trying to solve, or the feature that you're trying to solve, and also the time that you have. So it's not like a walk in the park. We all designers know we don't get much time when we try to do a design or try to solve a problem. So it's up to you to kind of figure out how quick or how fast that you can kind of do these and try to kind of solve these problems to help the development phase of the product. Next up, we have error-free problem-solving solution. So what this means is products with a process such as there will be very minimum or otherwise no errors found to put the product quality down. Because when you go in this process, you prototype the solution and you test it. While you're testing, you kind of think that, okay, we leave it up. We kind of forgot one major solution for this problem. Then you go again back to the ideation part, and then you kind of prototype it back and you test it again. Okay, have a look now. Okay, I think yeah, now this works fine. I think this solves the problem. So likewise, when you kind of do this process back and forth, even before you design the product, it will kind of help you to kind of identify and make the solution error-free. So that's about from my side. I just wanted to kind of give an in-depth understanding what design thinking is and how the design thinking process is defined and how we should use it, and what are the benefits out of this design thinking process. So Bishma, I think I'm sharp on time. It's 5:45. So we can move on to the Q&A session if our viewers have any questions related to anything that we spoke today.
Yes. So if you have any questions, you can raise it now. If you feel a bit shy, you can post the question in the chat as well.
something that I want to add here is that I think most of us, we do these things, but we don't understand if it's a process or not. We kind of do the empathy part separately. We kind of figure out the persona. Okay, this is the end user. These are the attributes. These are their needs and wants, and this is the goal that we're trying to solve for them. And then we do the prototyping. We think a lot, and we kind of like if it's a product, we kind of compare with other competitor products and see what their solution for these problems. We kind of try to get ideas from those solutions. So we're actually doing it, but it's not, we don't actually call it as a process. We do it here and there. But the more you kind of get attached to this process, you will see the value, and at any given time you can add value to what you're doing. And specifically as a designer, user experience designer, it'll add value, and you can kind of show what you're doing.
Okay, there's one question from Nilmini. So
Yeah.
she's asking, does the end users get involved in define, ideate, and prototype stages?
So it's actually, say for example, you have you're doing a product for someone that's really close to you, and it could be a cousin, it could be a relation. Say they have the ability to kind of get in touch with the end users. So for example, you're doing you're trying to come up with a solution for a product that's your cousins, maybe schoolmates or office mates, or maybe a bunch of friends. So if you have access to them, you can kind of directly talk to them, because when you're at the defining stage, you need to understand who your end users is. So it's not that you have to kind of sit with them and try to do these interviews per se to kind of identify the personas, but we can kind of have a general chat and understand who these people are. If you're doing a product for a mobile app for these school leavers or university students, we kind of discuss with them and try to see their behavioral patterns and stuff like that, and try to understand. And same goes with the ideation stage. Is actually, you can kind of do it alone, or you can maybe do it as a collective team. But if you kind of have the ability to get these users and try to get their thoughts also, it will maybe add value, and they will see the value of doing a design thinking process. Because at 910X we do workshops, right? When we do these workshops, we actually, when the requirement gathering phase, when the requirements are sent to us, we actually initiate a workshop, and we kind of go to them when we kind of internally have a solution ideated and jotted down, and then we kind of show them and explain them, and they also give their input. So okay, why can't we have it like this? I have seen in a certain apps it's like this. So these kind of inputs also add values, because they might not know, or they might not explain in a user experience perspective, but they're explaining from a user's perspective. So when they see that we are kind of adding value to their say, it will really help, and they will see that as UX designers or product designers, we are doing the right thing, and we are kind of solving it. And even prototypes, you can kind of, before you even do the high level mockups, you can jot down these ideas in papers and kind of show them and explain it. Look, this is something that we have it in our head. This is what we think might be a solution for the problem. What do you think? If they say yes, yeah. If they say no, I don't think this will work, because this might have certain issues, then before you even invest time for the high level mockups or the designs, you can cross them out, or put them aside, and try to refine your prototypes and present back again and get the ideas. So that's the value that will have if you get involvement from end users, but it's not a must. If you're a design team, it's more than enough as a design team to kind of ideate, to define, ideate and then prototype, and then you kind of approach if you have access to the end users. If not, internally you can kind of agree and vote upon and move forward.
Seems we don't have more questions, and maybe everyone is all good with the session. Shamir, thank you for that insightful and interesting session that you did for all of us today. I believe that everyone here were able to learn something new and useful from the topic. Thank you for that.